Hello everyone to our discussion panel, Centered Uncentered Voices. I want to welcome you live guests, but also our online participator and watcher. Before I present my guest, I would like to briefly say something about the course of the discussion. After a short presentation of my dear two guests, you will be able to ask questions. So be ready for that. And also to our online audience, you will be also able to ask questions, so leave your comments and then we will get them. And also if you feel like asking in German, that's actually not a problem at all. We can answer that as well. To my right, I would like to welcome Smaranda Krings. She works in different contexts in art and culture sector and is initiator of Question Me and Answer. To that you will say something later. And I also want to welcome my other guest, Tonica Hunter, curator, culture educator and DJ from London, has been based in Vienna since 2014. She has co-funded and curated for collectives which focus on arts and creating inclusive and intersectional spaces for artistic productions and consumptions. So, Smaranda, I would like you to start to make your presentation, please. Thank you.
Sure. Maybe you can turn it on. Good. Thank you very much. First of all, my name is Smaranda. Luna said that already. I'd like to introduce myself also shortly. What I will be presenting is our project Question and Answer that Justina, who's sitting here in the red dress, and me have been running for 2 years. Maybe to give you a context what it is even about. Question and Answer started actually 2015, informally kind of. Some of you maybe know the artist Osama Zatar. Back then we were working together in an association in Vienna dealing with social work for refugees, basically, and housing. When many people came in 2015 to Vienna. And he's an artist and was very interested in art, and I thought, well, I would like to know what kind of artists came to Vienna, right? So what we did is that we organized a party, basically, it's very simple, and invited lots of artists that were new to Vienna. The idea was to kind of get them in touch with the Austrian cultural sector and for them to get connections, to know who to talk to, who to maybe create a band with, make music with, like this. And this was kind of run for a couple of years informally, a little, hey, do you know someone? And then I got together with Justina to do this really formally as part of an association and with a website and everything. So what we do now is that we implement different programs that support artists that are new to Vienna in navigating the Viennese cultural sector. And the first program and the most well-known and biggest program is the Artist Collective. Where do I have to push? In that direction? Yes. The QMA Artist Collective. We're now working with the fourth collective already, so quite some experience with that already. And basically what we do is that there's an open call for artists that are new to Vienna, but also for artists who have been living in Vienna for a very long time. And what we do then is that we pair them up. So there's one artist working together, one artist that is new to Vienna, working together with an artist that that has been living in Vienna for a long, long time. And they create an artwork together over several months. And during these months, we also organize events like networking events for them to get to know the other people in the collective, for them to get to know different cultural actors in Vienna, to really build up their own network. Because normally, I mean, many of us are in the cultural sector. If you're new to Vienna, it just takes a really long time. If you don't know anyone yet, where do you go? Who do you ask? Who can you even approach? And also events for learning. So what does the market look like? For example, Florian, I don't know if he's here, he runs an online gallery, not only online, but mainly online gallery And we had a talk there, for example, 2 weeks ago on how is the art market being digitalized, what potential does he see, how can artists get into this sector. So our artists also get to learn all kinds of different skills. So just some impressions from the last exhibitions, because at the end of their co-working, we always exhibit what they did. Each pair is also assigned a curator, so there are multiple curators working on this whole process. Some of the past artists, I thought maybe you see some names that you know, so you can put it in some kind of context. This is the artists we're currently working with, 16 very cool artists. We're really excited at the moment. It's a lot of fun. So much for this project. Could
you go back for a second? It was very fast. Just a second.
Yeah, you want to read? Okay. Yeah, so Huda, who was won the Kunsthalle Prize, is one of the artists who was established in Vienna already. Yeah, maybe to the target group of this, also more. So basically, the people who are new to Vienna are mostly migrants and refugees, but in the last years, more and more migrants, because in the cultural sector in Vienna, there are not that many people with a refugee background in the culture sector or that have applied to us, like maybe they just didn't apply. But mainly we're working with people from Iran. And there are quite a lot of people from Iran at the moment, right? Also last year, I would say, yeah. Then we try to also do a lot of promotion for these artists. We get them in magazines, stuff like this, for them to get also be presented. These are the guided tours that we organize for them. So we have some partners that give us guided tours for free. We go and visit museums together, get to know the curators there. So like this. And the second program is QMA on stage. Muita, probably many of you know him. Muita knows everyone. This is actually his project that I will be shortly presenting because he's not in Vienna at the moment. He implemented this project as part of our association, but really took the lead on this. So for those that don't know Muita in this room, Muita is a musician based in Vienna. And his idea for many years has been to develop some kind of program that would support migrant musicians in having easier access to the music scene. So what he developed together with us is a kind of a prize, a showcase event, where every year there's an open call for artists for musicians to apply. And from this open call, a group of jury members then select the 3 or 4 most promising artists. And what happens then is that they get fancy prizes that are really just aimed at supporting them also financially, but in terms of like real goods. So there's a video production, there's a photo shooting with also people that are very well known in the scene. So again, we have this aspect of networking that when they do a photo shooting together with Gabriel Hüden, they get to know this guy, all the people around him. So it's really like working together means getting to know their surrounding also, right? This is kind of, it's very simple. We give away prizes, and the people that win them just can work further with that. So it's just a boost for a couple of artists. It's not changing the world, obviously, but for these couple artists that win, it's nice. And it gives also an opportunity to, who we target a lot with this project is bookers, obviously. So we do a lot of promotion in the music scene. Luckily, Muita knows a lot of these people, so it's very easy for us to really approach them directly and say, listen, I know you don't get in diverse musicians in your programs normally, but these 4 were selected by a jury of people that you also like, that you trust, whose music taste you trust, and they're good, so just take them. Last year, since we couldn't do it online, we couldn't do it in person, we produced short videos where each of the winning artists introduced themselves. Which was also really nice because the bookers could also kind of get an idea of who these artists were without having to meet them, without having to, I don't know, make a meeting with them and actually meet in person. Yeah. Does that still work? Yeah, maybe just some photos of the winners. Yeah. And just a fun project we do on the side, because Justina and I like working with kids, is we do a kid summer, where for a week long we give opportunities to artists that are new to Vienna to teach art to kids. So it's a one-week kids program that is also up again on the 12th of July, and we still have free spots. It's a one-week program, and the idea is also that half of the kids are kids that are Austrian, have been born here, whose parents were born here, and the other half are the kids that maybe would not go to the same schools as the other kids. So there are also different pricing schemes so that everyone can participate. This year we're doing it in Floridsdorf, actually. Yeah. 8 to 13. Yeah. So I'm open for questions. I think you just ask me whatever seems interesting to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess before we take the questions, I would also introduce to you Tonica. Would you like to? Yeah.
I forgot I had a mic. First of all, thanks a lot, Smaranda, for the presentation. And moving to Vienna 2014, didn't know anybody. And I think if I'd known, or there was an existing organization like Question Me and Answer, I would have glided much more easier into the scene. So congratulations on that initiative. It's really an important one. And I think that don't underestimate the importance or the politics of a party, like to actually get people together and music to get people together into an environment where they're relaxed and comfortable and feel safe, as a very important like networking tool as well. So I started my projects with partying, more or less. They continue with partying sometimes, but I started off doing my own events at Club Titanic in Theobaldgasse, and this party series was called On Fleek, and it was my way actually of getting to know a lot of people within the cultural, the artistic scene. And it then led me to doing curation of music and different visual arts, and kind of was my introduction to the Austrian cultural scene, which is very difficult, as you said, especially the Viennese cultural scene, I guess we're specifically talking about, to get into and to be welcome into. So yeah, brilliant initiatives. And I'm here today in the context of, I'm doing different projects. Right now, for the Symposium for the Arts, Sherry and Bashi invited me to present a project of mine, which I started last summer, called Reading the Radical. And this is an audio project which essentially asks 4 to 5 individuals to write and or read either a self-written piece or pieces of text, prose, poetry, rap lyrics, manifesto, whatever they feel moved to read, that basically reflects where they're at or things that they're interested in or something that's on their heart. So that's the broad concept, and I asked them to read on the topic is up to them. So they choose what topic they'd like to talk on. But the radical in it is that I try to deliberately center people who are not always in the limelight. So a lot of the time they do another profession and they're kind of put on the spot to write and to read something very personal to them. And I think the radical or the political in that is that they have the space to read or say what's on their heart. So it's a very simple concept which I've really grown to love, because it actually gives a platform to many different voices, yes, in terms of audio project, but also perspectives and opinions. And yesterday, who was here yesterday actually? More or less everyone? Okay, cool. Yesterday, the iteration that I did for D Arts, as I said, usually the content, the topics come from the readers themselves, but for D Arts, this time I actually asked them to focus on the 4 roundtable topics. So community building, policy making, artistic production, and Kunst- und Kulturvermittlung, so artistic education and outreach. And I would like to play one of the readings of Uldus Amadze. She's a dancer. She's a dancer, and she's an amazing, amazing artist. And her reading is on the topic of diversity policy making, or as she titled, Why Diversity Policy Doesn't Work.
Bei der Aufnahmeprüfung der Universität für angewandte Kunst der Stadt Wien wurde ich von einer Professorin gefragt, wie fühlt sich es für Sie eigentlich an, hier frei zu sein? Ich dachte mir, was meint sie mit der Freiheit genau? Jahrelang hatte ich verschiedenste Konzepte für Kunstprojekte bei Förderstellen eingereicht. Keines meiner Projekte wurde gefordert. Dann kam 2015 die Flüchtlingswelle. Ich reiche eine Arbeit mit den neuen Eingekommenen ein. Ich kriege die Förderung. Bam. Erste Emotion. Tränen sprudeln. Ich denke, das ist es, was sie von mir erwarten. Ich würde in eine Institution eingeladen, welche Vielfalt unterstützen möchte, um einen Tanzworkshop zu halten. Persischen Tanz soll ich unterrichten. Ich freue mich und mache es gerne. Nur werde ich immer wieder für die gleiche Richtung eingeladen. Traditionelle persischer Tanz, obwohl mein Fokus auf zeitgenössischer Kunst liegt. Ich merke, um zeitgenössischen Tanz zu unterrichten, werden hauptsächlich europäische TanzlehrerInnen eingeladen. Mir kommen die Emotionen hoch. Ich werde als Vorzeigestudentin vorgestellt und eingeladen, im Radio in der Sendung Talentbörse an einem Interview teilzunehmen. Die meiste Zeit werde ich darüber befragt, wie ich mit meiner Situation als Künstlerin im Iran und mit meiner sogenannten Freiheit in Österreich umgehe. Es bleibt wenig Zeit für die Kunst selbst, meinen individuellen Fokus und meine Interessen. So stellte sich mir die Frage: Lebe ich eine fremdbestimmte Identität? In meinen 13 Jahren Aufenthalt in Österreich waren es nicht wenig ähnliche Erfahrungen, die mir Schritt für Schritt klar machen sollten, dass ich anders sei. Ich habe also gelernt, wie ich durch mein Anderssein Aufmerksamkeit, Unterstützung und Arbeitsmöglichkeiten bekommen kann. Dadurch zeichnet sich, rückblickend betrachtet, unsichtbare, subtile Linien, welche eine fremdbestimmte Identität konstruieren. Als Frau, Iranerin, Orientale in einer westlichen Gesellschaft, als Migrantin und Feministin bin ich eine Projektionsfläche für so viele Themen und Ideen. Manche der für mich benutzten Kategorien kann ich wählen. Viele anderen werden mir übergestülpt. Manchmal, wenn ich über Freiheit nachdenke, werde ich von Wut überwältigt. Wo ist die tatsächliche Freiheit der Kunst in Europa, die ich mir erhofft hatte? Darf ich mich als Iranerin zum Beispiel auch einfach nur für abstrakte Formen, Punkte und Linien interessieren, ohne dabei politisiert, exotisiert und orientalisiert zu werden? Ist es zu viel gewollt, mir zu wünschen, einzig und alleine als Kunstschaffende wahrgenommen zu werden, unabhängig von meiner Herkunft und dafür anerkannt und möglicherweise unterstützt zu werden? Nach meiner Auswanderung hat sich auch die Frage nach der Zielgruppe meiner Kunst ganz neu gestellt. Für wen produziere ich eigentlich? Wen will ich erreichen? Wer bin ich eigentlich? Wer bestimmt, auf welche Art und Weise für wen ich Kunst produzieren soll? Welche Themen sind für welches Publikum vorgedacht und vorprogrammiert? Für wen möchte ich eigentlich Kunst produzieren? Für Peter und Lina? Für Hassan und Mina? Für mich? Für eine utopische Gesellschaft, in welcher alle Menschen die gleichen Privilegien genießen? Die Gedanken an Freiheit in Kunst werden komplexer, wenn ich an die sogenannte Diversity-Politik praktiziert in Österreich denke. Zweifel tauchen auf. Werde ich immer noch von der Diversity-Politik unterstützt, wenn ich nicht entweder die Erwartungen erfülle oder mich darüber aufrege, sondern einfach nur meinen Interessen bezüglich Kunst, insbesondere Tanz, nachgehe? Werde ich auch wahrgenommen, wenn ich nicht das Bild anspreche, welches es rechtfertigt, einer Frau aus dem Iran hier eine Bühne und Öffentlichkeit geben? Was wäre ohne die moralische Genugtuung, dass man es dieser arme Iranerin ermöglicht hat, sich künstlerisch auszudrücken und ihr endlich die erhoffte Freiheit geschenkt hat? Bin ich immer noch interessant, wenn ich nicht mehr die Opfer, die Kämpferin oder die Heldin repräsentiere? Werde ich immer noch zu Fachgespräche, Sendungen oder Festivals eingeladen, wenn ich nicht als Exotin betrachtet und deswegen ausgewählt werde? Werde ich immer noch Förderungen bekommen, wenn meine Themen nicht mit meiner Herkunft oder meinem Geschlecht zu tun haben? Die Zweifel werden mehr. Bin ich überhaupt in der Lage, gleich wertvolle Kunst zu produzieren, wenn ich mich auf unpolitische Interessensgebiete konzentriere, zum Beispiel auf eine bestimmte Ästhetik, ohne mich dabei mit aktuellen gesellschaftlichen Themen beschäftigt zu haben? Würde mich die Diversity-Politik immer noch unterstützen oder bin ich dann uninteressant? Ich denke weiter. Aber ich interessiere mich doch für das Politische, für gesellschaftliche Themen. Ich will damit arbeiten. Ich möchte für Gerechtigkeit kämpfen. Was macht mich dann so wütend, traurig und nachdenklich? Ich habe einen langen Weg hinter mir. Zuerst gutgläubig und jung habe ich versucht, meine Herkunft nicht als Aushängeschild zu verwenden, nicht deshalb Aufmerksamkeit, Unterstützung und Anerkennung zu bekommen. Ich glaubte an wahre, authentische und universelle Freiheit in der Kunst, für alle. Vielleicht gibt es sie für niemanden. Ich wurde immer wieder enttäuscht und in diese Enttäuschung bestätigt, als ich meine erste Förderung überhaupt mit einem Projekt mit und über geflüchtete Menschen bekommen habe. Danach hat sich der Gurt immer enger schnürend angefühlt, als ich bemerkte, dass sogar wenn ich mich bewusst dagegen stelle, mein Aussehen und mein Körper weiterhin diese Projektionen anziehen. Jetzt ist die Frage: Wie kann die Diversity-Politik praktiziert werden, um das Ziel, eine wertschätzende Grundhaltung im Umgang mit der Vielfalt einzelner Personen als auch Personengruppen näher zu kommen, ohne die betroffenen Personen dabei in ihrem Hintergrund und ihrem Geschichte einzusperren? Auch ich habe darauf keine klaren und einfachen Antworten. Die Widersprüche von Normalisierung bei gleichzeitigem Hervorheben von strukturellen Benachteiligungen oder Zuschreibungen werden nicht einfach verschwinden. Doch ich bin bereit, der Komplexität zu begegnen und möchte dabei helfen, Strategien für den Kunst- und Kulturbetrieb in Österreich auszuarbeiten, um echte Inklusion zu leben. Ich möchte mit einem Zitat von Hannah Arendt enden. Was ist Freiheit und was bedeutet sie uns? Begreifen wir sie nur als die Abwesenheit von Furcht und Zwänge? Oder meint Freiheit vielmehr auch, sich an gesellschaftlichen Prozessen und Regierungsgeschäften zu beteiligen, eine eigene politische Stimme zu haben, um von anderen gehört, erkannt und schließlich erinnert zu werden? Und haben wir diese Freiheit einfach oder wer gibt sie uns? Und kann man sie auch wieder wegnehmen? Dieser Ausschnitt stammt aus ihrem Buch Die Freiheit, frei zu sein. Ich hoffe, mein Beitrag hinterlässt euch nachdenklich und mit Lust zum Wandeln. Lasst uns die Freiheit, die wir haben, nützen und pflegen.
That was Uldos Amatzede, an amazing performer, dancer, artist. And she's usually seen, thank you for taking the time to listen to that actually, she's usually seen in a very present way as a dancer and expressing through her body and her movement. And I think that deliberately asked her to be part of the readings because I've worked with her in several different contexts and she's always got so much to say. And but she never has the platform to say it in that way. So I was really happy to have her write. And she was like, I'm not a writer, Tonica. I don't write. I don't usually do this kind of things. But she really had so much to say that I was really glad she could be part of it. And yeah, I think that this platform is something that I will continue because it really has opened up for people, as I said, that are not always in the limelight in the way that this puts them in the limelight in a very personal way. And they also get a chance to reflect on themselves and also cause reflection in others, and that's what this project is about. So thank you for listening as well.
Thank you too for both of you. Thank you, Smaranda, and thank you, Tonica, for the little presentation. And like now when I was listening to it, I was like, oh my God, some of those things, like when she entered to the university and stuff, actually it happened to me too. Like, you know, I remember sitting there, people waiting for me to get married, you know, because originally, like, I'm from Syria, because everyone wants to go to this big fancy wedding where I'll be like, you know, the bride with this huge wedding dress and everyone can, like, you know, dance and with the, you know, dabka and everything. And it's, I don't know, and always those strange questions that they used to ask, but, well, that's behind me now somehow. Well, the first I mean, like now everyone is invited to, ask questions anytime, raise your hand. Yes, of course.
I actually forgot to ask if anyone, does everyone want to speak German? Was there anyone that needs a little broad translation of what was said? Please don't feel shy if you do. No? Okay, cool.
No, that's fine. Whenever you would like to, ask a question, my colleague will come with a mic. You should better, keep the mask on and then ask the question. Yeah. I'll start the discussion. My first question is for you, Smaranda. What were the big challenges you faced at the beginning when you started question me and answer?
Well, I think it's basic challenges that one faces when one does cultural projects, that you have to get money, you have to get people involved, not being able to pay them a lot, which is just, you feel shit doing it, but you have to get people involved because otherwise you can't grow, right? So that's a challenge for sure, but maybe more on the layer of ideas and what it's about and the theoretical background. Of course, it's also a challenge to kind of see how the artists interact, and the curating is also, that's not my topic in the project, but there are always challenges with this because people don't know each other before. The artists that are part of the program, they get to know each other through the program. So also the artists who've been in Vienna for a long, long time, they're not from some leftist bubble where you know how to speak and what norms there are to make people feel included in discussions like this. So obviously it's also interesting to work on the topic of migrant artists, although that's not really a topic, but they're included in this obviously, and that's the target group with a group of Austrian artists that maybe don't really know many people that are new to Vienna, and they just grew up differently, right? Their entire surrounding are maybe Austrian people who've been living here for a very long time. So that's also an interesting thing to see how also the mindset changes. Of course, if you don't know many people at the beginning, you have what Ultus was also talking about, right? A lot of exoticizing of artists who are new to Vienna. This is something very natural, or many people just do it if they don't know people from other cultures and they kind of just project stuff on them. It's also an interesting way to navigate it, and a challenge definitely.
Thank you. What about you?
Challenges?
Yes.
Many. Financial is one aspect. I think there's existential, psychological. I think the challenges for me in my work, Reading the Radical is one concept of many things that I do, or one project of many things that I do, but the challenges are making space so the diversity conversation is very new in Austria, and it's very old in other parts of the world, but so the challenge is to get beyond a very basic understanding of what diversity is, in terms of not looking at others and creating distance and othering people and difference, but understanding that different people have very different experiences and experience the world in different ways because of their skin color or religion or gender. And that unfortunately there's discrimination based on different factors, which is why intersectionality is also important. So there's a challenge of, first of all, getting to a level of conversation of what diversity should actually try to achieve. Then there's how we include diverse people. And then there's what I think is a step beyond, which is to empower diverse people. So for me, my challenge or my goal is to always find a way, not just for myself, but to open up a path for others. So it's always, okay, there's this institution or this person who wants to book me or wants me to curate something, but I'm always thinking, how can I actually open that up to others? As a curator, naturally, of course, I will ask other artists and producers, etc. But it's always a question of pushing a budget or pushing the program a little bit more. Most of the time I'm asked to do something as an individual, one thing as part of a program is already preconceived. And I'll always try to push to have my own concept within that. So I have to make space for myself and then make space for others so that there's a kind of empowerment of myself so that I can also bring up other BPOC or QT BPOC. So that's my main challenge, to actually broaden a little bit the mindset of those who ask me to do something, to think, okay, this is one project or one film or one DJ set, but how can we sustainably include people of diverse backgrounds?
Yeah, like pushing the limits a little bit more, so the next time you can step, you know, and start somewhere else where you're like further and further beyond. Yes.
Is it very loud?
Yeah.
Hi. Firstly, thank you. Those were really interesting presentations and projects. And Tonica, I wanted to follow up on that because I was also wondering what strategies you've come up with personally as a curator, let's say for this project that you just explained, to go really far down, let's say, the hierarchy of people that are normally presented. So how do you find people that are not just used as tokens, let's say, in Austria, but how are you doing research to figure out and explore the many artists that are truly unseen? I mean, of course, you can speak to your friends and you can speak to this person or that person, but how do you dig even deeper? Because I think that's hard for everyone to achieve.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, I think way before I even started to curate, as an individual moving to Vienna, not knowing anyone, and also being a black queer person moving from a big city of London to the tiny Vienna, I actively was engaging with finding community, finding spaces that were safe, and realizing that in Austria and in Vienna there were not spaces that were offered that were like that. So having to create those spaces. I still come across new artists, new creatives every day, every week, and that's the exciting part of my work. How do I dig a little bit deeper? I mean, I do actively a lot of research online. I do a lot of friends of friends, going to a lot of exhibitions myself, but also trying to go to the off spaces, not go to institutions, and also work within off spaces. So a lot of what I do, there was a project a couple of years back, 2019, that I did at a space called Anatolian Schnitzel, which is like it's actually as an imbiss, as the name actually suggests, was a schnitzel takeaway place. And they were offering like a Zwischenmieter, so you can take over the rent for a month. And then I did an open call for that area, but then also asked friends of friends of anyone who'd be interested to exhibit, and met a lot more people through that collective that were doing the space, but then also met a lot of people through the open call. So it's a constant work to find people that are unseen, unheard, but also my work is to provide the platform when I do find them, and then that's an inspiration to find others that are also seeking this kind of space. And it's a project I did with Stan 129 last summer. Was it last year? 2020 is a blur. Wow.
Yeah. Well, it was never there actually.
What?
Somehow,
It's like it didn't exist. Yeah, but it was very present at the same time. Weird. So Stan 129 was also a space for me that was really important, that is embedded within community, that it's not these centralized white wall institutions. They're very much, thank you. Nice. Community, this is how we work. So yeah, exactly. So offering a space that are not these centralized, very elitist ways of finding artists, and also showing that people can access art. Like community should have access to art in a way that they wake up and it's around the corner. Or, we actually exhibited so this project was possible because even though it was opening after the lockdown, it was presenting works from inside the space outside. So they've got the huge windows, and we had a pop-up in there, a hair pop-up, looking at the story of black hair story and black history through hair. We had Ina Adoan doing a photo exhibition presented through the windows. So it was about reintegrating into community post-corona. We're still in corona, but post-lockdown, several waves, and also about reintegrating and understanding how important culture is for community. So to answer your question, yeah, actually curating also in off spaces is a way that I also find and hopefully attract and work with other artists, by not being in these centralized, clear, obvious spaces.
Thank you. Is there any other question? No? Okay. So, Smaranda, for you, question. How do you, how should I say, I mean, those open calls you do, how do you try to find those new artists who are maybe not so embedded in the art and cultural scene?
As Tonica was saying, it's just a lot of research. I put together a really long list of...
Like, do you really write them? You know, stalk
Yeah.
them on Instagram?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Like, totally. On Facebook more. I'm not on Instagram, unfortunately, or fortunately. Yeah, I just add people on Facebook. Like, I know you're an artist, okay, and then I invite them to the open call, and it works. And it's really the way you've got to do it, because I think a lot of people are also maybe feel shy when they're new to a city. They don't feel like maybe it doesn't seem approachable, the project that we're doing, from the design or whatever. So it's really about getting people, getting their attention by just really contacting them. I write emails to people, I find their email address somewhere on their website, and then just write them, hey, I found your website today, don't you want to apply? And also, obviously, we're in touch with organizations that work with refugees who are new to Vienna, not in the arts field, but just that provide basic services, and they always share the open call. So if somebody...
They know someone.
Exactly,
They could,
exactly.
Okay, they could spread it pretty fast. We both, I mean, like, you both talked about a little bit, like, you know, about financing. I mean, art is not for free, and it should be, you know, get paid. How do you think all those scholarships and, you know, the financing from the government should change so that, you know, unseen or unheard artists could also have access to money?
For me, having experience recently, so I didn't apply for funding for a few years actually when I first got here, because I was kind of put off by how it's really difficult, and also as a non-native German speaker, it's very intimidating. It's very a lot of legal, a lot of very like hard language, and so it put me off. And I had a point to this. Point was that I lost my point actually. Yes, and therefore, now that last year for the first time applied for BM Kurs and looking for funding there, and in the requirements, they most of the time are asking not laypersonen, so not laypersons or individuals, but usually you have to be tied to a verein or an organization or a company, even better. So they have some, I think for me, the structural obstacles are still that as an individual, so imagine you are a refugee, or even as a black Austrian, or as a migrant, some of a migrant background and biography, I think that it's still very inaccessible, because if you're not tied to a bigger organization, you don't have the background or the CV or the awards or whatever it is to get to be actually taken seriously, your application to be taken seriously, then there's still a very structural obstacle that are very present on that level. But I since I've lived here, sort of lived and worked in Vienna almost 7 years, I think things have opened up. Question Me and Answer is a good example. There are other funds and other support systems like Kulturproduzentin, you know, even Stellen, for example, you know, that I know they've got funding for smaller projects and things like this. And I think on that level, it does allow people to apply. That's a much more friendly and much more accessible way of applying for funding. But on the institutional structural level, it's very alienating actually still.
It's always scary, to be honest. Like, I also apply like for funding, and every time I download those sheets, I was like, oh my God, what are you gonna do? And then like those numbers and then those Excel sheets, and it always so scary. And then I really have to take all the power that I have to really sit and say, okay, you're not gonna move until it's done. And sometimes it doesn't really work, but at least I try.
I would say it's there's quite a solution that I would just propose for this, is that we just need quotas for public funding. At the moment, the public funds are divided in such a way that they really go a lot to Austrians whose families have been here for many generations. And I don't know how many of you know the program of Kulturproduzentin, but they give stipends to 5 artists a year for half a year. It's basically like the stipends from the BKA, but they just give it to artists. And what the city of Vienna is doing is that whenever a migrant artist applies, this is what they tell me, what I've heard from artists around, they say, well, why you're applying with us, you can just apply for Kulturproduzentin. So basically it's like just like go there.
Dividing it. Like.
But it's only 5 stipends a year, so I mean it's not really anything substantial. but it's like a good excuse for them. Just go there. And this is kind of what's happening. So we just need a quota that a certain percentage need to be people who haven't been with their families living here for 300 years.
And I mean, something that came up yesterday in one of the discussions was that the jury members, I mean, like it's not so transparent, you know. You don't really know how much money goes where and who gets it, and when it comes to, you know, big institutions. But then also you always find the same names again and again because it gives them like somehow legitimacy, you know. Oh my God, she got this, so he's gonna get that. And so it's really hard for someone who is new and maybe did not get all the awards and who does not have a legitimacy to really come and apply. And it, like, despite from the German part and the bureaucracy that you have to fill, but still.
I think also, like, unfortunately, diversity is really still seen, or being inclusive in terms of like how funds are allocated to diverse people or diverse projects, is still very much seen in a very like quantitative way. So like quotas, even though they're important, like I feel like they sometimes also essentialize. How do you actually do that without categorizing again or classifying like which groups deserve or should get what? Because even when you think about, like, I think the conversation of diversity in Austria for the main part still very much stays on men and women, which is just like, wow. There's so many spectrum of not only gender, but this is, I feel like when they say 60% women in the organization, they feel that that's enough, and that's enough in terms of diversity. So I don't even think they're even there yet to have a conversation on how to make sure that funding is allocated in a way that's even inclusive properly, to understand the reality of people's existence. So it's a very long way away, but I also don't have the answer, but I also don't know about quotas either. If that's the way, only within the context of Austria, I think it's a bigger conversation. Yeah.
We have a question in the audience.
I just wanted to add shortly. I mean, yesterday we also talked about data that is missing. Sorry, I hope that was not me. So data that is missing, and actually in Germany and in other countries, they are starting to collect this data, although many think it's not allowed to do so. But without this data, we will not be able to have any quota. And also to add, I mean, who are these people that are sitting in these institutions, in foundations? Who are the, like, we need also diversity there. We need people with diverse background who sit in the boards and who decide on where the money goes. So this is also, again, another level of where I think we need to fight for more people. Me personally, I work also for a foundation, and this is also what I really try to fight for internally when new people are hired, that they have a diverse background, because else it's not gonna change.
Thank you. I think the staff and the staffing and the hiring processes is where it absolutely needs to start, because I did a project in 2018 with Kulturen in Bewegung, actually. It was a Creative Europe project, so funded by the EU, and a consortium of Germany, Austria, and Belgium. Thank you. And we did a mapping research of cultural. I actually brought maybe five copies of these. They're on the piano. Of the mapping we did. So it was mapping of cultural institutions and looking at both quantitative data, so surveys that asked about the three areas: the personnel, so staff, programming, how their content and their content is done, and the public, so how they basically make sure that a diverse public is able to have access to the artworks of the institution.
The audience.
Exactly, audience, yeah. So we did this in Austria, and it was quantitative in the survey, and then it was qualitative that we did interviews of what we called gatekeepers. So at the very senior level, we interviewed the head of Weltmuseum, so and so and so. And as you can imagine, the results, which you will read, in Austria were a bit disappointing, but not surprising. But I think one of my main conclusions from this is that the conversation, the understanding of diversity in Austria is very, very quantitative, that we do need this data, but the ticking off of boxes of we have this many women or we have this many languages isn't actually enough. So it really only went on a certain level, and the amount of institutions that didn't even want to respond to the survey was already an indication of this. No one's really ready to have that conversation yet. But I definitely agree that a starting point, which is why at the beginning of this I talked about empowerment, is to allow BPOC or diverse people to be in positions, decision-making positions, to be able to even think in these ways. So, yeah.
And where do you see, like, for example, the responsibility in cultural educational institutions? Because we heard in Urdu's, you know, the reading, that she was also talking about the Angewandte. And so where do you think, what does have to change there in order for people who are new here to, you know, be also free to do the work that they would like to do? That does not have to be about, like, you know, identity or being from the Orient, from Iran.
I didn't study here, so I'm not sure. I don't have direct experience of the educational system here. But the same things that I'm talking about in the institutions, actually, this study did not, and we thought about it afterwards, include educational institutions, and we wondered why we didn't approach Angewandte and Bildende. But I hear the same issues about the unbefristete contracts of professors that are still white, or what is it, male, pale and stale.
And we don't even have so many women, like, to be honest.
Sorry? And
I mean, like, the last time I was talking about this with a friend, and then now I went to the website to see, like, I studied graphic design at the University of Applied Arts. So then we went to the website to see, like, who did go? Who did change? You know? Who are the new people there? And then I discovered, oh my God, it's still like the same stuff like 10 years ago. Same people. They changed maybe one man with the other, but that's it. But actually the cultural discussion changed, you know?
One of the artists I saw on your list was Ramiro Wong, who was fighting a lot for non-EU and outside of the EEA students' rights. Is it Angewandte? Yeah. And it's also nice to see him on the list because he's a great artist. But you know, at the time there were conversations on the student rights of like Austrian students, and there was much more focus on this than actually the non-EEA students and how they finding it difficult, some people, to pay their fees and things like this. So I think there's just an imbalance entirely of in the educational system also.
You have a question, right?
Yeah, I want to...
From the audience, from the online audience.
From my.
Okay, you're gone.
Myself as a participant.
Hello.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think art universities just are on the same level of institutional failure as funding institutions are. Like Asma Ayat is going to have a conversation after this one. She's studying at Angewandte. And Bildende, sorry. And I think she will also shed light on this. And I know horrific stories from MUK, Musik- und Kunstuniversität. And really like students trying to, form collectives to somehow install an anti-discrimination workshop for all teaching people there, because like stereotypes being reproduced and reproduced and reproduced, and I mean, it's why I think this institutional level is so interconnected is that in many Ausschreibungen, calls, you need to, in order to apply, you need this formal education, this formal art education. You have to have like some proof of, I don't know, diploma. And so actually you can only access this public money when having gone through this institutionalized, discriminatory and racist process, and you've actually somehow been taught this institutionalized, assimilated art stuff. And I don't know, I don't know whether I can make myself clear at the moment, but I think it's really a big problem, and yeah.
And I would like to add something to this, that a lot of the students also, like, even if they get in, then when they start, they sometimes just do not feel comfortable at all. And then they never really finish. So then we have this problem again with like not being able to apply or to...
I can definitely speak to that personally because I studied at the Bildenden at the Art Academy, and I did finish, luckily, but when I started, I was in a class that was very Austrian. It was an Austrian teacher, and I'd say 90% of the students at least were Austrian. And I was new, I mean, this was 2005, so I felt I hadn't fully integrated, so to speak, but it was so toxic for me, this atmosphere. There was so much... that professor, in my opinion, had gotten the job because he was such good friends with people in higher up places, and then I think that climate was part of the class as well, and I think that's very Austrian, is it's who you know, and things stay in a club, and often the boys' club. And I ended up switching to another class that just happened to have the most diverse students body in the academy. I didn't realize it beforehand, but once I got there, it was just a completely different feeling. Another thing about studying art in Austria, and I think it's better at the Angewandte, but at the Bildenden at that point, there were really no classes in English. I had one class in English. And of course you can make the argument, well, you're in Austria, you should speak German, but we're also in an art world, which is based on English, and so I thought that was also very, very old school. So that was my experience at the Bildenden. I have a question to you, Smaranda, about the feedback that you get from the different sides of your project, from the, let's say, the musicians, because I saw the list of musicians you're bringing in, and the artists. How do both sides of your project feel about it afterwards?
Thank you for this question. We actually always send out feedback sheets, so we actually have some data on this. And the artists really appreciate the fact that they get to meet new people. Quite obvious. They meet people that they wouldn't normally meet. We have people in our program, getting back to the point of institutions, that did not study at Austrian art institutions. So this is very important, I think, to stress, because as you were all saying now, in most art production places in Austria, you have to have some degree from some Austrian university. And then if you have some degree from some Austrian university, you mostly know the other people that were there, so you're kind of in that bubble. But in our project, they meet people that are from other groups that are maybe not even really in the art scene at all. They just do art after their day jobs in the evenings, because coming to Austria, they couldn't do art full time anymore as they did where they came from, right? So it's very beautiful to see, and especially because it's focused so much on an individual friendship, kind of. So one artist working together with one other artist over several months. So there are really friendships being created, and that's really beautiful to see. And it sounds very kitschy, but it was just really nice. Yeah, so that's kind of the feedback that we're getting, and artists really have the opportunity to delve into the art scene. So we see a lot of the artists that we're working with continuing to work with that person and working with people out of from their friend group, from the Austrian people. They get invited to more stuff. So it's really a sustainable change, kind of, that they really stay in these groups and not just for this short project.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Okay, so then I'll go on. What advice would you give to, young people working, that was a question for both of you, working in the cultural and artist scene, feeling, unheard or unseen? What advice would you give? Where should they start? Okay, think a little bit.
Make space for yourself. I think young and old also. Anyone who's just young in terms of entering into the scene, where you can try to make a space for yourself. I found it really important to build collectives. So when I first started doing things, they were collectives that I founded. So Sounds of Blackness, Series Black. They were a way for me to have, also not just be in my head about how I want to do things, to think about how to work with others. But this kind of also gave me a grounding, as you said, in a sustainable way, that these are friendships that remained, and collectives that have still remained to this day. So find they don't have to be like-minded people, but find people that you are comfortable with. Don't underestimate the importance of having friends, being comfortable in the space, and feeling welcome. I think this can also, as an artist, as a creative, be super integral to your work and how you feel comfortable to produce and to create. So I think that, find a space. It doesn't have to be physical, and I'm also talking about a space within a collective or within people, with people that you feel comfortable with. What else would I say? I think that's the main thing that I found was helpful to me, and it's still supported me till now to actually create.
Thank you. Would you like to add something? No, maybe not.
I'm not sure yet. Probably not.
Sure. Yeah, you can add it later. Let's say if we would dream now, when would you say you have the feeling mission accomplished?
As in personally, or like for Austria? Because I'm like,
when would you say like, yes, we're there now? Like we opened all the spaces and we,
So maybe from our perspective a little, at the beginning when we started the project, we were thinking that we would also go into institutions a lot and really open up spaces. Then we realized that this is a lot of work and we don't have the budget and the time for that. So we kind of focused on these very specific projects that we do. Like it's very clear. There's an open call, you work together, you exhibit. It's very clear. But we don't do this kind of policy work. So our goal will never be accomplished because there will always be new people in Vienna. So we do this consulting, supporting, getting people in touch with other people, and don't really work so much on the institutional side. So it's not like we have some goal to make some institutions more open, because people will always be new here, and they'll always need access, and you'll always need a place to go if you're a new artist in Vienna.
Thank you. Would you like to?
I think in terms of what I want to do with my work, I think that it's an ongoing process in terms of, as you said, there's always new creatives, artists, and to kind of keep providing a platform for them. I think that since I've moved to Austria, so 7 years, been here 7 years now, I've already seen changes. Like I've seen, discussions, panels, but also there's at least a kind of spark of, okay, this is something we need to think about, it's important. And I think that in 2014 when I moved here, that wasn't the case. So that isn't to say that there are not, especially within the community I'm talking about, specifically the Black Austrian community, that there hasn't been people that we're standing on the shoulders of. There's Simone Nuhl, Vanessa Spambauers, Claudia Unterweger, etc., etc. I'm not even naming all of the amazing people that I'm referencing, but they've done the work, they've been doing the work. Pamoja, there are a lot of communities and institutions and organizations, I should say, actually, that have kind of paved the way for Austria to be more open-minded, and they're still doing that work constantly. I think for me personally, like within the events that I do, or the projects that I do, there are little moments where I think, okay, I'm really happy that happened, or I'm really happy that there's an artist that comes up to me and says that they didn't think about doing their work in this way, and they're really happy they had this platform, or we're at stand 129 and we're having a drink with like the market store stand next door. And for me, this is like the very humane moments that are like, that make you forget about policy or, diversity policy or whatever diversity is. It's like, they're just very humane moments. And those are for me little like, okay, there's like hope. But yeah, I think it's, as I said, it's an ongoing work.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? Yes. Don't be shy.
I'm not. Another question to Smaranda, because this is a new project for me. I didn't know about it before. Have you thought about, or are you already doing any kind of alumni work? So people that have gone through the program and are therefore mentoring others, because of course that could be a very useful tool.
Yes, we try to include artists that were part of the past collectives in the current work. So, for example, in the jury for this year's artist collective, because we have an open call, right? And people apply, and we always have a jury of 3 or 4 people. And in this year's jury, there was, for example, an artist from last year. And also in last year's jury, there was an artist from the year before. So people that also went through the program that can actually judge, is this person a good fit for this program? Would they actually benefit from it? What is it like? Can they fit into this? So this for one, and also the curator, one of the curators this year is also an artist that participated last year. So this is kind of, we try to involve them also in what we do, and also for some events that we do extra. So this year we're planning this festival. I was talking about also in July with the kids camp, also part of it. And we're involving artists that we also worked with in the last years for them to also get to know the current collective. So for this festival, there'll be people from old collectives and the current collective working together. And we're also planning like fun parties just to get together again with the old collectives and the new ones. So definitely, it's very important because it's also kind of community building practice. And people have something to share, right? So if you organize a party for the old collective and the new one, they actually have stuff to talk about, and it's not awkward because they can just, how was the experience for you? It's quite easy to get in touch and start talking.
That's like a concrete empowerment example of like when you allow artists, creatives to actually be in a decision-making position too, and having that, they have the skill also to do that. So it's actually like full circle.
And it's very nice because they, it gets bigger and bigger, and then maybe the old artists can also open new doors for the new ones getting in. Question.
Wow, was für eine Performance.
I feel like I could have just speak out very loud. Thanks a lot. Tonica, I have a question for you. Given the fact that last year was also hitting the cultural sector a lot with like the pandemic, was there like a project that you would have said you enjoyed a lot and then maybe also ticked more boxes, as in it was financially okay, you could involve people that you wanted, and you also had ultimately power, which is important to make decisions? So is there one from the past, and is there something in the future where like I'm actually really looking forward for this project, and if so, could you please tell us?
Thank you for the question. There was a project beginning of, what year are we? Oh my God, I'm really confused by this. So beginning of this year, February, right? Yes, February, Cyber Festival, contemporary immersive virtual art. It's a new concept by two brilliant artistic directors and also curators, Eva Fischer from Soundframe and Angie Shahira-Paul, and also Martina Meganon, actually, I forgot her. And the three of them, I've worked with them in different capacities, as I said, as a DJ, and they also recognize that I've been in the last years actually doing more curatorial work, and they asked me to curate for Cyber Festival as a discourse curator. So I was actually centering artists who are having a very clearly doing conceptual art and doing more social political, social justice in their art. So I did a curation program of this, and also hosted the Cyber podcast. So was also having conversations with the artists, but also the other curators. So this was something that I really enjoyed in terms of content and the way that I could curate, but also the way that they work. They're very much inclusive in terms of fair pay, also giving enough space to diverse curators, but also content. It was a digital program, so it worked during the pandemic. It kind of ticked a lot of boxes, and they also had like an awareness team and code of conduct team who were doing monitoring of online conduct, and to actually enter the spaces and to view the galleries and the 3D spaces or virtual spaces. You had to click. They set up a code of conduct which is written by a lawyer, and they have to accept that before you can actually access any of the art. So they had a support team that was on site and really answering any questions, or there wasn't any incident actually. But I think that is truly inclusive in terms of making sure that conduct and consumption of art is also a very conscious space, and also a safe space for the artist, but also the audience. So that was one, I think, like prime example of an initiative that I was happy to work with because of the very thorough thinking of how to be truly inclusive. And what's coming up next? Something that I'm looking forward to. My mind has gone blank now. Also, what am I working on right now? Kai Libra, this urban street art festival, are having a collaboration with the Vent Museum this year. Excuse me, in August. It was July. Now it's August. And they are an urban street festival, street art festival, doing graffiti, murals, etc. And this year they want to focus on specifically explicitly racism in the arts, and are specifically curating in a way that they are including artists that deal with a bit more social injustice in their work. And they asked me to initially do a bit of the Raum program, but then the artist that I suggested, they actually wanted him for the main exhibition, so I kind of made my way in there. I'm really happy to work with that because it's actually dealing with, as I said, social injustice, but I'm working on specifically a Black Austrian history timeline with Vanessa Spanbauer and a Black history illustrator specialist called Russell Chasley, who's from the Netherlands, but he specializes in illustrating Black history. So that's a project that I think it gets the institutional recognition, but within that we have a lot of space to do what we, and also it's called Allow Us to Reintroduce Ourselves. So it's about the perspective of history from those who have experienced it directly. So yeah, thanks for the question.
Yeah, you could go for it. Thank you very much.
Question and answer. Also about your, like, I know Smaranda, you're not the curator, but also like for me it would be interesting to know, like, how do you curate such a group of artists, or like not in terms of the artists themselves, but of their work. I think it's pretty diverse and pretty maybe difficult to put into one context. Or like, how do you somehow facilitate the curational process? I mean, the improper walls people are involved, I guess. But
yeah, I think the main curator should speak about this. Yeah, if you want to. Yeah. She can have this one.
You don't have to share.
Well, thanks for the question. I will think how to answer now. I was not ready now. When we select artists, we also think about, of course, like the medium they work with, and what art they do, and also what are their concepts, what are their topics, themes, what they're interested in. And this is also one of the aspects, like, of how we peer the artists together. So we look at it also, and then when we think about. We really think about something like that. It should be a bit not the same mediums that both artists are working. Like, so for us, it's very interesting, like, kind of challenge them. Sorry, and then of course, like, as now ours as curators' work is like to help them to find this like common ground together, but in terms also on what they want to express with their artwork, like what's interesting and what relates them together, and then like put together two different mediums and maybe even different ideas or concepts they are focused on. But we like, I don't know, I can tell the example, like, I met like two artists last week I worked with, like two wonderful artists, and it was one of the first meetings together. So first meetings I would always attend, and I would already say, okay, now you can also do things without me. If you want, you invite me. If you need me or if you need some advice, I'm gonna be there. But we basically just had a small talk at the beginning, like how was your day, what you did, and trying to get to know each other on this very, very personal level. And then we started like to think like more on a conceptual level, like what's interesting, what's important for us, like what you're working on, like what I'm interested in, and started to try to find this like matching points and try to find this common ground. And most of the times actually, like how we work, like as a curators and artists, curators, our team of curators, they choose artists they want to work like according to the topics we are interested in. So I work like a lot of on social political topics because it's very interesting for me, our identity. Other curators I work with like bio art or like really like fine arts. So it's different, and I think the outcome is also different. That's why we select like diverse artist groups and diverse topics and concepts and approaches, and then everything comes together at the end in one big group show with different stories which were narrated by this artist working together for a certain time.
Thank you so much, Justina. I would also like to know, is there actually a topic, like, you know, a topic for all the artists and then you do the exhibition, or is it like completely free?
It's very free, and that's a very crucial point. I think that's what you wanted to hear from me now also, kind of the direction. Half of them are migrant artists, and they don't have to do anything related to their origin, like anything that people project on them. Some people do, of course, like feel free to do whatever you want, but there is no obligation whatsoever. So as Justina was saying, bioart, lots of bioart actually last year and this year now again, all kinds of stuff. And that's super important because also artists say, this is one of the few exhibitions that I'm doing since I'm in Vienna where I'm not put in the box of, you're the migrant artist, teach us about racism or something.
I can do something that I'm really interested in and not...
Yeah, not having to always be in the educating role or taking a certain perspective of showing the audience your reality, like what has my life been like, sharing very personal stuff.
And when will this exhibition be, actually?
The current artist collective that we're working with...
Because they just started, right?
Yeah, they will be exhibiting at the end of November in AG 18 in the 1st district. AG 18, it's Urban Art Gallery in the 1st district. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm looking forward. Are there like any other questions from the audience, or maybe online? Online audience, no. Do you have any comments for us? No? Yeah, I guess so. I hope so.
Maybe for the exhibitions I can also add, if somebody's interested before November already, for the artists that are part of our collective, we also organize small exhibits for them throughout the year, so like satellite exhibitions, so they get to work with other curators together. So we're planning an exhibit at Rudolf Leib Gallery in the 1st district also, so we also go into like fancy places, which is very important to us, to not stay always in the free scene kind of, but really the spaces that also belongs to them and should belong to them. So there we have corporations running with red carpet showrooms, so there's showrooms in the metro stations, these big ones. So once a year our curators curate the one at Karlsplatz, the big one, and some other stuff. I think 2-3 more this year with Kunstraum Super, like stuff like that. So always then smaller groups of the collective then exhibit there together, and then at the end all of them together kind of.
And for example, at the gallery, does the people who own the gallery also have a word and, like, you know?
Yeah, we try to not do it at all like us renting the space, but it's about the artists engaging with the gallery owners. So we kind of like, you know, this is an opportunity for you to meet new artists. We're just bringing them to you, kind of. And that's cool for us because that way they have to engage with them and we're not just renting it.
Okay, I guess, ich weiß nicht wie viel, like, I did not look at the time at all.
We started a little late, so we have still 15 minutes if you want, but if you want to have the full 1 hour break, I think food is ready.
Yeah. Now it's like really the last chance you have to ask any questions.
Or during food. Yeah, and I just wanted to say that please stay with us for the last slot. And I know weather's good, but we have a nice voguing workshop. We have a nice dialogue session here. We have another radio workshop. So don't leave just after lunch. Stay with us.
Yes, that's true. Like after lunch, I mean, like we can talk at lunch a lot and exchange and network, but then afterwards we actually have a program as well. So please stay. It's going to be super interesting. I really want to say thank you, Smaranda, and thank you, Tonica, for being here today. And thank you for everyone who is watching us online and the live audience as well. It was very nice. Enjoy the sunny day and let's go get some food. That's